Hi everyone. In this talk, I'm going to be discussing what happens in the deep sea of the Great Barrier Reef. So if we look on the image on the left here, we can see we've got these craters that are in the ocean, and it kind of looks like the moon, even though we're about 25 meters below the sea surface. In this talk, I'm going to be talking about what this has in common with leopard spots. So if we think about being deep in the Great Barrier Reef, and what I mean by deep is of order 25 to 50 meters. This picture on the left here shows the northern part of Queensland. So we can see in this little inset image here, we're really at the top of Queensland. So we're kind of the top half of the Great Barrier Reef. And then these light brown areas that you can see here, which span more than 6,000 square kilometers, are all habited by Halimeda, which is a specific type of plant that grows in the deep ocean. This area is so large, it's actually about twice as large as the total area covered by shallow water coral reef systems. And then if we zoom in on one of those areas, we see these crater-like structures, and these crater-like structures are occupied by this plant called Halimeda. This plant is a little bit interesting in that it's an algae, but it also drops calcium carbonate onto the sea floor. And it's thought that this dropping of calcium carbonate is what's responsible for these craters, but we're still not quite sure how they form because those spatial patterns are quite specific and quite widespread. And so my question that we want to answer is, how are we getting craters in the ocean from a plant? So we had to think a bit out of the box here, and we wanted to compare this to how leopard spots form. Because leopard spots are an example of a mathematical pattern called a Turing pattern, which is a pattern produced by a mathematical model with very special properties. Some other examples of Turing patterns that are produced by a mathematical model are shown below. And so these patterns just emerge out of the model. And you can see here, for example, that the pattern in the middle looks a bit like the leopard spots. This pattern in the middle also looks a little bit like our craters in the ocean. So if we look at these Turing patterns, we can generate them by a mathematical model. And this video that's being shown here is an example of how the top pattern of these is generated by such a model. But if we have an underlying model that generates the middle pattern, which is quite feasible, we might be able to match the structure of that model to the mechanisms that are responsible for the craters that we're getting in the ocean. And so we really want to figure out, can we get these patterns from this model, and does that tell us something about how Halimeda is responsible for creating these structures? So this will help us to answer the question, how did the deep ocean change over the past 10,000 years? Because that's how long it's been developing. And if we discover more about the historical formation of the Great Barrier Reef, it might tell us what might be happening in the future as well. Thank you.